Let me tell you, there are some stories you just never shake off, the kind that start on a night so cold and mean that you can almost hear the world itself turning away. That was the night Emily, 8 years old, was tossed out of her house like she was nothing but a mistake someone regretted making. No blood ties, no one left to call her family, just a thin plastic bag and a rain-soaked notebook she clutched as she curled up on a cracked park bench. Folks talk about starting from nothing, but until you see a little girl shivering under a playground slide, try to make herself small enough to disappear, you don't really get how cruel nothing can feel. That house, you could almost smell the coldness coming off it, not from the weather, but from the people inside. Dinner in their Texas home always looked picture perfect if you didn't know better. Big table for the family, candles, all the trimmings. But Emily never sat there. Her spot was over by the back door, at a side table, where Delilah, her stepmother, would shove a cracked chair in her direction and drop off the coldest scraps. Frank, the stepdad, he'd keep his mouth shut, eyes on the TV, letting Delilah run the house like it was her own private parade. The only time Emily's name came up was if someone needed to blame her for something or remind her she wasn't really one of them. Her real mother, Isabel, was just a ghost by then, a face in a faded photo high on the wall, the last thing left that still proved Emily ever had someone who loved her. It was always Ava at the center of things. Ava, with her new dresses and birthday parties, and the kind of smile kids get when they know nothing bad will ever really touch them. Emily got used to standing at the edge of every room, picking up the trash, tying the balloons, staying out of the way. She kept her head down, never cried, not when they served her burnt chicken wings and stale bread. Not when Delilah said she was a burden. Not even when Frank just looked past her like she was a smudge on the window. But let me back up a sec. On the day it all blew up, Ava's birthday, Emily watched her little stepsister get showered with gifts. When one shiny purple game device went missing, it didn't take long before Delilah was in the kitchen, eyes sharp and voice low, accusing Emily of stealing it. And you know the worst part? The way Frank just stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, when Delilah yanked that game out from under Emily's pillow like he was relieved to finally have proof she didn't belong. "She's not my daughter," he said, like he was talking about a stranger in the street. Not a little girl who'd lost her mother and still called him dad. So, when Delilah dragged Emily out into the storm barefoot, no coat, clutching a plastic bag with a few worn-out clothes and her precious notebook, nobody stopped her. Frank just watched from behind the curtain and let the door slam. The wind and rain slapped Emily as she stumbled down the block, but she kept going all the way to that park beside the empty preschool. She curled up under the slide, hugging her notebook and whispering to the memory of her mom, asking what she'd done wrong to end up here. And maybe if you were out there that night, you'd have walked past her too, just another kid hiding from the rain, easy to ignore. But sometimes the world cracks open in the smallest way. Ethan Crowley, a man who'd been running from his own regrets for decades, went out for his morning run. Wore an army jacket, old sneakers, the kind of tired that only soldiers and broken families know. He spotted Emily right away, not just because she was there, but because she was so still, like a kid after a first real heartbreak. Even when the park guard tried to shoo her off, Ethan couldn't look away. He stepped in, handed her hot cocoa, and offered something more than pity, a place to get dry, warm up, maybe even believe in people again. He had no idea who she was. Not yet. In Ethan's quiet cabin, there was a senior dog named Rex, a spare mattress, and a fireplace where the world seemed to slow down just a little. That first night, as Emily fell asleep on the couch, Ethan sat up late, staring at an old photograph of his sister Isabel, the one who disappeared years ago, leaving only silence and unanswered letters. The next morning, as sunlight crept across the floor, Ethan rummaged through the garage for a heavier coat for Emily. There, he found a battered music box, Isabel's name etched into the lid, and inside, a letter she'd written but never sent. Reading it, Ethan realized what he'd tried so hard not to know Emily was his niece, the child his sister had run away to protect. You ever have a moment when everything you thought you knew gets turned upside down? That was it for Ethan. Emily was family, the only family he had left. He decided, right then, that he wasn't going to be the kind of man who looked away when someone needed him most. He filed for custody, sat through interviews with social workers, faced down Delilah and Frank in court all, while Emily, small and silent, clung to hope like it was a secret she was afraid to say out loud. The twist that nobody saw coming? Ava the Golden Child finally broke down on the stand and admitted that her mom had told her to fake the missing toy and blame Emily, just to get rid of her. The judge, a steely woman named Regina, listened to it all the teachers who said Emily came to school hungry and dirty, the neighbor who saw her locked outside, even Frank's flat-out refusal to claim her. And when she finally asked Emily where she wanted to live, the whole room seemed to freeze as the little girl found her voice and said, "With Uncle Ethan." It wasn't dramatic, just honest. The kind of truth that slices through every lie. When the court granted custody, Ethan picked Emily up and promised she'd never be abandoned again. He fixed up the little blue room facing the maple tree, made sure she had clean clothes, let her take as much time as she needed to heal. Some nights, she still woke up from nightmares, but Ethan was there not with big speeches, just a quiet presence that said, "You're safe. You're home." Life didn't get perfect overnight, but it got real. On her first day at her new school, Ethan braided Emily's hair, packed her lunch, and sent her off with a hug that said more than any words. Months later, when Emily stood on the porch beneath a sky scattered with stars, she turned to Ethan and whispered, "My mom said there's always one star you can count on. Now I have two, and maybe that's the whole point, you know? Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to turn away, and suddenly, a child who thought she'd been thrown away for good finally gets to come home." So let me ask you, have you ever been that star for someone? Or has someone shown that light for you when you needed it most? Stories like Emily's remind us that you don't have to fix everything. You just have to be there steady, real, a little bit brave. If this touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe share your own story below. And remember, you're not alone, not here. In this little corner, we look out for each other.